Many people engage in daily masturbation without realizing the subtle mental consequences that may develop over time. While the act is often seen as harmless or even healthy in moderation, overindulgence, especially on a daily basis, can begin to have effects on the brain's reward system, which in turn impact motivation, focus, and overall mental clarity. One of the most overlooked consequences of frequent masturbation is the gradual onset of mental fog, which is often difficult to identify because it comes on slowly and becomes a new normal. To understand how this works, it's important to look at what happens in the brain during masturbation. Each time a person masturbates to climax, the brain releases a surge of dopamine, a neurotransmitter closely tied to pleasure, reward, and motivation. This dopamine release is meant to be a brief, natural reward for reproductive behavior. However, when the brain is flooded with dopamine daily, especially through artificial stimulation like pornography, it starts to adjust by reducing the sensitivity of its dopamine receptors. This process is called downregulation. In other words, the brain becomes less responsive to dopamine over time because it's constantly overstimulated. The very chemical that once helped drive ambition, excitement, and drive is now having less impact. As a result, everyday activities that used to feel satisfying, whether it's working on a project, studying for an exam, spending time with loved ones, or simply going for a walk, can begin to feel dull and lifeless. The brain, having been trained to chase quick, high-intensity rewards, starts to find ordinary life boring. This creates a mental state that many people describe as foggy, a feeling of being present but not fully alert, unable to concentrate, and disconnected from reality. You may still go through your daily routines, but your mind often drifts, tasks take longer, and you may feel perpetually tired or unmotivated without knowing why. This fog isn't just about feeling lazy. It's a neurological shift in how your brain handles pleasure and drive. And it doesn't end with just a decrease in focus. Many individuals who engage in daily masturbation find themselves trapped in a cycle. They feel unmotivated, so they seek pleasure to feel better, which often leads to another session of masturbation. That session provides a temporary dopamine spike, making them feel good for a short while, but eventually leaves them even more depleted than before. Over time, this cycle trains the brain to rely on quick bursts of pleasure instead of working toward long-term goals. This is dangerous for anyone trying to build a successful life because discipline, focus, and delayed gratification are key to achieving anything worthwhile. What's especially harmful is that this impact is subtle at first. Most people don't notice it immediately. They may blame their lack of motivation on external circumstances like stress, boredom, or lack of opportunities. But beneath the surface, their brains have adapted to a new baseline, one that craves stimulation but lacks the energy or focus to pursue real progress. A person might sit at their desk, trying to start a project, but their brain keeps whispering, "Let's do something easier, let's feel good now." That whisper often leads to another session of masturbation, further reinforcing the cycle. It's not just productivity that suffers. Creativity takes a major hit too. A foggy mind doesn't generate new ideas easily. It's hard to innovate or problem solve when your mental bandwidth is constantly being drained by artificial highs. Many people who quit daily masturbation for even a few weeks report that their thinking becomes sharper. Their ideas come more easily and they feel more present in their lives. The ability to stay focused on a single task for extended periods, a skill that's crucial for success in almost any field, gradually returns. They start reading again, learning new things, and engaging more deeply with their work and relationships. The negative impact of daily masturbation on motivation is particularly harmful for young people. During your teenage years and early adulthood, your brain is still developing. These are the years when ambition, exploration, and growth are supposed to shape your identity and your future. If daily masturbation becomes a central coping mechanism during this critical period, it can create long-term habits that hinder personal development. Many young men, in particular, report feeling a strong sense of dissatisfaction with their lives, not because they lack potential, but because they lack the energy and drive to pursue it. They don't understand that their lifestyle choices, including frequent masturbation, might be the root cause. What makes this issue even more complicated is the modern world's access to unlimited sexual content. With smartphones and high-speed internet, explicit material is just a tap away. Masturbation is no longer just a response to biological urges, it's now driven by convenience, habit, and sometimes even boredom. And because it's easy to justify it's normal, everyone does it, at least I'm not harming anyone, many people never stop to assess the impact it's having on their minds. But just because something is common doesn't mean it's healthy. Drinking soda every day is common too, but we know that over time it leads to real health issues. The same logic applies here. It's important to note that this doesn't mean masturbation is inherently bad. When done occasionally and mindfully, it doesn't usually have the same harmful effects. The danger lies in the frequency, the intensity, and the psychological dependency that can form over time. When it becomes a daily routine, especially paired with pornography, it transforms from a harmless release into a barrier that silently blocks mental clarity, discipline, and forward momentum. Breaking free from this fog doesn't happen overnight. It requires awareness, self-discipline, and sometimes even external support. But those who make the choice to reduce or quit daily masturbation often find that their minds begin to clear, their confidence grows, and their energy returns. Life becomes vivid again. Tasks that once seemed overwhelming become manageable. Dreams that felt distant begin to seem possible. That's not because life suddenly changed. It's because their brains are no longer dulled by constant overstimulation. Ultimately, our ability to focus, stay motivated, and live with purpose is one of the most precious resources we have. Anything that dulls that edge, even something as seemingly minor as a daily habit, deserves to be examined honestly. If you've been struggling with low drive, mental fatigue, or a lack of clarity, it might be worth asking yourself if daily masturbation is silently playing a role. Sometimes the mind doesn't need more stimulation, it needs space to recover, and in that recovery, clarity returns. Daily masturbation, especially when paired with the frequent consumption of pornography, can gradually lead to emotional numbness and a noticeable detachment from real-world relationships. While this isn't immediately obvious to most people, over time it becomes clearer that something feels off, not just mentally, but emotionally. The human brain is wired to seek connection, intimacy, and bonding, especially through real-life human interaction. Physical intimacy, eye contact, shared vulnerability, and mutual affection are all key elements in developing emotional depth and relational strength. But when someone engages in frequent solo sexual activity, especially through digital means, it bypasses the natural emotional process and provides instant gratification without any of the necessary human connection that builds long-term intimacy. This slowly trains the brain to become satisfied with fantasy and removes the motivation to pursue or maintain genuine relationships. One of the most overlooked aspects of daily masturbation is how it influences a person's emotional range. Over time, frequent solo release dulls emotional highs and lows. The dopamine release from climax becomes a substitute for other sources of emotional engagement, like talking to a friend, sharing a vulnerable moment with a partner, or even experiencing real joy from life's simple pleasures. This substitution means the emotional system in the brain, which thrives on real connection, becomes weaker. The more a person turns inward for pleasure, the more distant they become from others emotionally, mentally, and even physically. They may still function in relationships, go to work, talk to friends, or hang out with family, but their emotional engagement is often muted. It becomes harder to feel connected, empathize deeply, or care with the same intensity. This emotional blunting often goes unnoticed until the consequences begin to show in one's relationships. In romantic or sexual relationships, this effect becomes even more visible. Individuals who engage in daily masturbation often report a decreased interest in real-life intimacy. Pornography presents an endless buffet of novelty, new bodies, scenarios, fantasies, and extreme stimulation, which rewires the brain's expectations. When this becomes the norm, real partners who are complex, imperfect, and emotionally nuanced begin to feel less stimulating. This leads to a dangerous comparison. The real person may not measure up to the brain's inflated expectations set by daily exposure to highly curated sexual content. As a result, sexual intimacy with a real partner may start to feel less exciting, less satisfying, or even boring. This dissatisfaction can breed resentment, frustration, or emotional withdrawal in relationships. Moreover, people who indulge in daily masturbation often experience a significant drop in social drive. The brain no longer feels the need to seek companionship or romantic connection when pleasure is readily available alone. The effort involved in building trust, navigating emotional complexity, and committing to a partner starts to feel too demanding when compared to the effortless satisfaction of solo pleasure. Over time, this can lead to isolation, not just from romantic opportunities, but from friendships and family bonds as well. A person may begin to feel lonelier even as they push others away, not fully understanding why relationships no longer excite them the way they used to. This loneliness deepens the dependency on solo pleasure, continuing the cycle of emotional detachment. Another subtle but significant impact of daily masturbation is the erosion of emotional resilience. Human relationships require patience, empathy, compromise, and vulnerability. These qualities are strengthened through real emotional challenges, disagreements, and shared experiences. But when someone habitually escapes to the fantasy world of masturbation to cope with stress, anxiety, or boredom, they are less likely to develop those skills. Instead of learning to face emotional discomfort and grow through it, the individual turns to a quick escape. This stunts emotional maturity. As a result, when real-life conflicts or emotional challenges arise in relationships, they may feel overwhelming or not worth the effort. This contributes to a pattern where the person either avoids conflict entirely or exits relationships prematurely, further reinforcing emotional disconnection. In some cases, daily masturbation can also create a sense of guilt, shame, or self-disgust, especially when the individual becomes aware that the habit is interfering with their emotional life. These negative emotions can create internal barriers, making it even harder to be open and vulnerable with others. People may withdraw emotionally out of fear that they are somehow unworthy of love or incapable of deep connection. Even if the person wants to engage emotionally, they may feel blocked, trapped behind a wall of their own creation, built slowly through years of private escapism. That wall grows taller with each daily retreat into fantasy, making the leap into real intimacy feel more and more intimidating. The long-term effects can be devastating. Many people find themselves in their late 20s or 30s with no meaningful relationships, struggling with social anxiety, or afraid of vulnerability. Some may have partners but feel emotionally dead inside, unsure how to reignite connection or passion. Others may continue to hop from one superficial connection to another, never settling, always feeling emotionally unfulfilled. In these cases, the underlying cause may not just be personality or life circumstances. It may be the accumulated emotional numbness and detachment resulting from daily masturbation. Recovery from this emotional detachment is possible, but it takes time and intention. It begins by recognizing the emotional cost of the habit, not just the physical or psychological side effects, but the emotional toll it has taken. Many people who reduce or eliminate daily masturbation report feeling more emotionally present within weeks. They start to notice beauty in small things again, feel more connected during conversations, and regain a desire to bond with others. Eye contact feels more meaningful, hugs feel warmer. The desire to touch and be touched grows not as a sexual urge, but as a human longing for connection. These are signs that the emotional system is beginning to wake up again. Intimacy, both emotional and physical, requires availability, not just physical presence, but mental and emotional openness. When someone is emotionally unavailable due to overstimulation and emotional numbing, real intimacy becomes almost impossible. The more a person trains their body and mind to respond only to fantasy, the more distant they become from real love, trust, and shared vulnerability. This is one of the most dangerous and least discussed aspects of daily masturbation, not because of the act itself, but because of how it slowly rewires emotional expectations and severs the very bonds that make life meaningful. Ultimately, the richness of human life is found in connection. Emotional depth, vulnerability, the joy of being seen and loved, these things can't be found through a screen or in isolation. They are built in real time, with real people, through laughter, tears, mistakes, and forgiveness. When daily masturbation stands in the way of that, it does more than distract, it denies the very thing we all crave the most: connection. And when emotional numbness sets in, it doesn't just dull pain, it dulls love, hope, and meaning. That is a danger too serious to ignore. Many people don't realize that daily masturbation, especially over extended periods, can subtly interfere with the body's natural hormonal balance, leading to physical fatigue, reduced energy levels, and even a decline in overall vitality. While occasional sexual release is a natural biological function and can even carry some health benefits, the issue arises when this becomes a daily or compulsive act. The body, like a finely tuned machine, relies on a delicate equilibrium of hormones, nutrients, and recovery cycles to maintain optimal health. When this balance is disrupted regularly, the consequences may not appear all at once, but they will inevitably show through constant tiredness, poor stamina, and a sense that the body isn't performing at its best. One of the primary concerns with daily ejaculation is the depletion of critical nutrients, most notably zinc. Semen is rich in zinc, a vital mineral that plays an essential role in immune function, energy production, muscle recovery, cognitive health, and testosterone synthesis. When the body is forced to produce and expel semen daily, it draws upon its reserves of zinc and other trace minerals. Over time, if these nutrients aren't adequately replenished through diet or supplementation, deficiency symptoms may emerge, ranging from chronic fatigue to weakened immunity, slower wound healing, poor concentration, and reduced physical performance. Even if a person eats well, the daily loss of these minerals through ejaculation can gradually wear the body down. Another major concern is the temporary drop in testosterone that occurs after ejaculation. Testosterone is the primary male hormone responsible for strength, energy, drive, and libido. Studies show that after ejaculation, there is a noticeable dip in testosterone levels, particularly if the release happens frequently without sufficient rest periods. While the body will naturally recover these levels over time, daily ejaculation doesn't give the endocrine system enough time to fully recharge. This can lead to a baseline drop in testosterone over weeks and months, manifesting as low energy, muscle weakness, lack of motivation, brain fog, and even symptoms of mild depression. What many people experience as laziness or unexplained tiredness may actually be their body's way of signaling that it's hormonally depleted. This hormonal dip also affects the body's ability to regenerate and repair itself, Testosterone and other anabolic hormones like growth hormone are crucial for muscle recovery and tissue repair. Athletes and fitness enthusiasts often report faster muscle growth and better performance when they abstain or reduce ejaculation frequency. That's because the body diverts its energy and hormonal resources toward recovery and growth when it's not constantly investing in semen production. Daily masturbation redirects that energy, depleting resources that could be used to build strength, boost endurance, and support mental sharpness. Over time, the body becomes sluggish and workouts feel harder. You may lift the same weights or run the same distance, but you'll feel more drained and less accomplished. Physical fatigue from daily masturbation also impacts sleep quality. Many people use masturbation as a sleep aid, thinking that climax helps them relax and fall asleep faster. While this may seem true in the short term, it often leads to disrupted sleep cycles. After ejaculation, the body releases prolactin, a hormone linked to relaxation and satisfaction. However, frequent spikes in prolactin, especially without deep restorative sleep to follow, can disrupt circadian rhythms. You may fall asleep quickly but wake up tired, unrefreshed, or groggy. This low-quality sleep accumulates over time, causing chronic fatigue that's hard to shake off even after 8 hours of rest. The individual may begin to rely on caffeine or stimulants to get through the day, which only masks the deeper problem of hormonal imbalance and insufficient recovery. Furthermore, the central nervous system also takes a hit. Every orgasm, especially when frequent, triggers a cascade of neurochemical changes that require time and energy to reset. When these surges happen daily, the nervous system can become overstimulated and fatigued. This neural exhaustion can make you feel physically drained, hypersensitive to stress, or emotionally flat. You may notice that tasks requiring concentration feel more taxing, and even small physical exertions like walking, climbing stairs, or carrying groceries seem heavier than usual. This is the body's subtle way of saying it's running on an empty tank. Another lesser known effect of daily ejaculation is the weakening of pelvic floor muscles. These muscles are crucial for core stability, posture, bladder control, and overall physical strength. Frequent ejaculation without recovery time can overstress these muscles, potentially leading to issues like premature ejaculation, urinary leakage, or core instability. Physical fatigue in this area contributes to a general feeling of weakness that often goes unexplained, but is deeply rooted in excessive physical strain on the reproductive system. Over time, this constant cycle of depletion without adequate recovery leaves many people in a chronically tired state, unable to tap into their full physical potential. You might look healthy on the outside, go to the gym, eat nutritious foods, and sleep on time, but still feel like your body isn't functioning the way it should. You may wonder why your strength gains have plateaued, why you wake up tired every day, or why your once vibrant energy now feels like a memory. For many, the answer lies in the unexamined daily habit that's slowly draining the body's life force without them realizing it. Interestingly, those who take a break from daily masturbation, whether it's a few weeks or a couple of months, often report profound physical changes. They feel more energized, stronger, and more alert. Workouts become easier, sleep becomes deeper, and fatigue begins to fade. The body feels more stable, grounded, and capable. This isn't magic. It's the result of the body finally having the time and space it needs to restore hormonal balance, replenish nutrient stores, repair tissue, and regulate the nervous system properly. These changes offer powerful proof that daily ejaculation isn't as harmless as it seems. The physical body is a finely balanced system that thrives on rhythm, recovery, and moderation. When we disrupt that rhythm with constant self-stimulation, we rob ourselves of the full expression of physical vitality. No supplement, energy drink, or motivation speech can replace what the body naturally gives us when it's allowed to operate at its highest level. And while masturbation in itself is not inherently harmful, daily repetition, especially driven by compulsion or emotional escapism, creates a slow drain on physical energy that accumulates day by day, week by week, until it becomes a weight we carry without even knowing its source. In the end, our energy is one of the most valuable assets we have. It fuels our ambitions, supports our health, and powers our relationships. Protecting that energy means being mindful of how we use our bodies, how we treat our minds, and how we balance pleasure with purpose. Daily masturbation may offer a few seconds of release, but if it comes at the cost of long-term physical strength, clarity, and vitality, the price is simply too high. The body speaks sometimes in whispers, sometimes in fatigue, and it's up to us to listen before the consequences become irreversible. Daily masturbation, especially when coupled with digital stimulation like pornography, has the potential to evolve from a simple habit into a full-blown addiction. What starts as a seemingly harmless way to relax, relieve stress, or satisfy curiosity can quickly become a compulsive behavior that hijacks a person's mind, time, and willpower. The danger lies not only in the act itself, but in what it does to the brain's reward system and one's ability to exercise self-control. Over time, this constant cycle of stimulation, release, and depletion rewires the brain to prioritize instant gratification over long-term fulfillment, discipline, or purpose. It's a slow transformation that many don't notice until they feel trapped mentally and emotionally by a behavior they once thought they could stop at any time. The brain is naturally designed to reward certain behaviors with dopamine, a neurotransmitter that creates feelings of pleasure and satisfaction. Activities like eating, exercising, achieving goals, or forming relationships all release dopamine to encourage us to repeat behaviors that are good for survival and growth. But when we repeatedly flood the brain with high levels of dopamine, like during daily masturbation, to extreme visual content, the brain adapts by reducing the number of dopamine receptors. This is a biological defense mechanism meant to prevent overstimulation, but it comes at a cost. Natural pleasures begin to feel dull or uninteresting. The brain becomes conditioned to crave only the high-intensity reward that masturbation and pornography provide. This leads to a cycle of dependency. The more you masturbate for the dopamine spike, the more your brain craves that specific kind of stimulation, and the less satisfied you feel with anything else. This is how the addiction cycle begins, subtly at first. A person may promise themselves they'll only do it once a day or limit their exposure, but that discipline begins to erode over time. They may find themselves unable to resist the urge in the middle of work, during late nights, or even when surrounded by tasks and responsibilities. The impulse becomes stronger than reason. What once felt like a choice now feels like a compulsion. And with each relapse or broken promise, self-trust begins to decay. The individual may begin to feel powerless, ashamed, and even resentful of their own behavior. This loss of self-control isn't just about the physical act, it's a psychological shift that affects every area of life. When you can't say no to yourself in private, it becomes harder to maintain discipline in other areas, whether it's working out, staying productive, eating clean, or pursuing long-term goals. The worst part about this kind of addiction is that it often masquerades as a low-risk habit. Unlike alcohol, drugs, or gambling, daily masturbation doesn't leave obvious external signs. There are no physical scars, no bank account emptied overnight, no public consequences. That illusion of safety makes it even more dangerous. The damage happens in silence, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. It erodes confidence and cultivates guilt. Every time a person gives in, they often feel a wave of regret or emptiness afterward. That post-release drop, known as the cooling-off period, is where reality kicks in. You feel the time you wasted, the energy you lost, and the shame that slowly accumulates over time. For some, it creates a downward spiral where they begin to question their own worth or potential. It leads to negative self-talk like, "I have no control, I'm weak, or I'll never break free." What's worse is that the constant cycle of addiction often becomes a crutch for deeper emotional issues. Many individuals don't just masturbate out of desire, they do it to escape. Whether it's stress, boredom, loneliness, rejection, or anxiety, masturbation becomes a quick fix, a form of self-soothing that offers immediate relief without confronting the real problem. Over time, this creates an unhealthy emotional coping mechanism. Instead of developing tools to manage difficult emotions, the individual retreats into temporary pleasure. This avoidance behavior compounds problems in life. Difficult conversations are delayed, responsibilities are ignored, goals are postponed, and beneath it all, the person remains emotionally stagnant, unable to grow because every challenge is met with escape rather than action. This addiction also feeds into a broader loss of time and energy. Daily masturbation may only take a few minutes, but the time surrounding it, thinking about it, searching for content, and recovering afterward can eat up hours every week. That time could have been used to learn a skill, build a business, write a book, improve relationships, or take care of one's physical health. Over the course of months or years, the opportunity cost is staggering. What could you have created with all that time and energy? How far could your life have progressed? These are questions many people ask themselves too late after they've already sacrificed years to a behavior they never thought would control them. It's also important to understand that the loss of self-control from this addiction doesn't stay confined to the habit itself. It spills over into other areas of life. The brain, now conditioned to seek ease and instant gratification, begins to resist anything that requires effort or delayed reward. Studying feels harder, exercising feels like a chore, working on long-term goals feels overwhelming. This mental conditioning can sabotage personal development at its core. True progress in life comes from doing hard things consistently, pushing through resistance, sticking to routines, and managing impulses. But when your mind is constantly pulled toward the easiest, fastest source of pleasure, it becomes nearly impossible to stay on track. Even if you have big dreams or ambitions, you may find yourself sabotaging them unconsciously because your brain has been trained to choose comfort over challenge. Another overlooked consequence of this addiction is how it affects self-perception. A person caught in the cycle of daily masturbation often begins to feel weak, dirty, or ashamed. Even if no one else knows, the internal dialogue becomes filled with self-criticism. This constant mental beating weakens self-esteem. And when self-esteem drops, motivation follows. You stop believing in your own ability to change. You accept mediocrity because you no longer feel worthy of greatness. This mindset becomes a cage. You may still smile, laugh, and go through the motions of life, but deep down you know something is holding you back, something you haven't fully confronted or defeated. Breaking this addiction is not easy, but it's possible. It begins with awareness, truly understanding the cost of the behavior and what it's stealing from your life. From there, you must make a commitment to reclaim your time, energy, and willpower. This doesn't mean perfection, but it does mean intentionality. You create systems to limit access to triggers, you build new habits that replace old ones, and most importantly, you begin to develop real coping skills for stress, boredom, and loneliness. Over time, the urges weaken, the brain heals, dopamine levels begin to rebalance. The more distance you put between yourself and the addiction, the more power you regain. Ultimately, the loss of self-control that comes from daily masturbation isn't just about a physical act, it's about the gradual surrender of your agency, ambition, and authenticity. It's about letting your potential be buried under a routine that feels safe but is quietly destructive. If you want to live a life of meaning, strength, and purpose, You must take back control. That starts by facing the habit head on and deciding that you are no longer willing to live in the shadows of your own impulses. Because freedom doesn't come from giving in, it comes from rising above.